Bitcoins unite. In Ravencoin we trust. Welcome all Ravenites all around the world. We appreciate you being here with us live in Twitter Spaces. Today I am your co-host, Blockchain John, with my co-host, Ravencoin Assets. And we do have Quoting that's going to be speaking from time to time, helping moderate. And we have Mark Azano that's going to be helping us talk about P2SH. Welcome. First off, I want to get started about talking on P2SH. I did pull up a little link here briefly describing what P2SH is, okay? So P2SH, or pay-to-script hash, was a patch to Bitcoin added in 2012. So, on the record, P2SH was first ever used in Bitcoin. All right, for clarity purposes, remember that, because Ravencoin is a fork of Bitcoin. Okay, so it was added in 2012, which altered the way it validated transactions. It is most commonly identifiable as the addresses in Bitcoin that starts with a 3 instead of a 1. So that's how you can tell the difference. So when you look at a Bitcoin address, whenever you're trying to send or receive, if you see that number 3 at the beginning of that address, that is a P2SH address. If you see a number 1, that is a legacy address. All right, keep that in mind. P2SH addresses on chain. Basically, instead of the normal practice of paying to a public key hash or redeem script, it instead pays to the hash digest. This is very, you got to remember this. Okay, the hash. This is what we're going to get deeper into. Mark, hopefully you're ready for this. We're going to get deeper into what the hash is all about here. Of the redeem script on chain, which ostensibly accomplishes the following things. Number 1, it stores an annotated version of the locking redeem script instead of the script itself, which may save some fees for the person who creates the transactions due to smaller size of the resultant transactions at the expense of the party that receives the transactions when they spend those funds. It hides the locking script so that it is not public until the payee moves the coins elsewhere. 3, a complete change to the validation logic of Bitcoin. Basically, the hash of the script is validated first. Then the locking script is then executed separately. So the reason I keep mentioning Bitcoin over and over again, because Bitcoin has obviously done it. It is there. Ravencoin, we're not there yet. So there's not many articles in regards to what Ravencoin is doing with P2SH. But once it's out, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of articles of people using P2SH, and we're going to learn a lot more about that. So for the time being, what we're going to be discussing is what's to come in the future for Ravencoin. And I'm sure we can easily echo what has been accomplished in Bitcoin. So with that said, Mark, let's bring you onto the mic if you don't mind. Or would you like me to continue giving you some more inspiration here?
I appreciate that, John. Thank you so much. And happy Monday to everyone on the call. I thoroughly appreciate all of you and your time. And we definitely are really excited about this new technology that's coming out with Ravencoin. I really want to appreciate those that have joined the call. And we look forward to seeing you in next year. And when Ravencoin is able to publish this update, make it available to the masses. With that said, we'll go ahead and get started. As John mentioned, P2SH is the pay-to-hash script, and we'll simplify the terms down. It basically makes it easy for folks to be able to transact across blockchains in a way that is a zero-trust manner. You probably have seen some conversations and discussions about Polygon and Matic and their ZK rollups. They're trying to do things without zero knowledge, but this is with zero trust. So to get into the details a little bit about this and how it works, you basically have two players. We'll just use the example that was posted on the GitHubs of Alice and Bob. Alice has some Bitcoin, Bob has some Ravencoin. Bob creates an asset out of his Ravencoin and wants to sell that to Alice, and Alice wants to pay with Bitcoin. Make this happen, Alice has got to lock the transaction into a P2SH, a pay-to-script hash. You could think of it like a smart contract, but it's a light version of it. It's not fully programmable like a smart contract, and that you can do anything with it, including interfacing with an oracle or dealing with other advanced technologies. It's more like a simplified smart contract. So Alice will take her Bitcoin and lock it into this script and use it to pay for what Bob has in Ravencoin. Something else I want to highlight, something else to note is that P2SH isn't unique to Ravencoin. It is something that existed in Bitcoin previously and something Bitcoin supports to this. What needed to be modified was the fact that Ravencoin itself, as far as the assets are concerned, wasn't necessarily scripted to support P2SH. So in a bland example, let's just take assets and put them off to the side. Say Alice has got some Bitcoin, Bob has some Ravencoin, and then they want to make an exchange. They would basically lock each of their tokens up into a P2SH. I want to say similar to a smart contract, but we'll say something like a smart contract light to help those that are coming from Ethereum understand how this works. And they basically exchange keys. They have transaction hashes that represent the proof that they locked their coins away in their respective blockchains. They then exchange those hashes with each other through private channels and are able to sign their transactions on each of their blockchains and say, okay, Bob, I sent, speaking from the terms of Bob, you say, hey, I'm Bob. I sent Alice my Ravencoin. Alice has her Bitcoin. She says, I've sent Bob my Bitcoin. And the two transactions, they both come with a hash and a secret that is used that they exchange, and they sign it on both of their blockchains. And then the result is they're able to transact cross-blockchain without having to trust that one person is going to send the transactions from one or the other. So to recap on that, that enables players to make trades across blockchains in a simplified manner that doesn't necessarily include so much of functionality as something like an Ethereum, Solana, Polygon, Matic smart contract. So what's new? What came out with Ravencoin is the team has worked to make it possible to be able to transact assets in addition to Ravencoin. So the new 4.7 release that is coming out sometime next year, I think, after the halvening, after the polls have had a chance to upgrade to support this as well. The idea is that you would not only be able to transact cross-blockchain with just the tokens themselves, with the coins themselves, but you could also be able to transact on the assets as well. So say I created, I'll take an example of a Wall Street Cash from the Ravenclaws pool that we have. Say I've got some assets that have been created. I call them Wall Street Cash, and I want to be able to sell them to somebody, and they want to pay with Bitcoin. The new feature that's coming out is going to enable us to be able to send those assets, not just the coins, but the assets, over to and have them paid for in Bitcoin. And so you get a copy. You get that asset from the Ravencoin blockchain over to Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin can be used to pay for that asset. You can also describe some instructions to say, if I want this to last, say it's something like a loan or something like that, you can do that, and it's limited to 24 or 48 hours or however long you want the contract to last. And there's specific instructions that represent how that operates. Now, I know this is a lot of information, and we definitely want to give everyone an opportunity to ask some questions. So for those of you, I'll pass it back to John and say, now that we've gone over the basics of it, we'll go ahead and go into next steps.
Sure. All right, so are there any questions so far? If you have any questions, go ahead and raise your hand. What do we got? We got a bunch of likes here, 100%. Okay, beautiful. So they're awake. That's great. That's good news. I like when you guys are awake. Of course, this is going to be a very technical episode, so please, if you have questions, ask. You're going to unlock the layers of the Ravencoin onion. I don't know if ravens eat onions, but yeah, we're about to do that.
Definitely.
All right, then. Doesn't look like
so we could probably
Okay.
Yeah, that's okay. So we can go into some use cases for this. Some of you may have been hearing about Bitcoin coming out with the ability to talk to DeFi. Some people have been trying to establish some DeFi projects um, on top of Bitcoin itself. This is possible through something like this P2SH. They also include, there's this new term called this new term to me, SegWit, or segregated witness. They're using this technology to enable people to be able to transact with Bitcoin over DeFi, and part of what is incorporated into that is this P2SH protocol. And so some of this is also coming to Ravencoin, which means the possibility certainly exists that we could see DeFi for Ravencoin as well sometime in the near future. Possibility.
Okay. Would you happen to know how far we are in the process of P2SH? Have you been testing it out yourself?
I've downloaded the 4.7 QT version of Raven myself, yes. I'm just trying to get my hands on some test Raven coins because I don't want to spend real money on this. But the proof of concept is there. I did see the Medium post from Tron Black himself, where he posted an update and actually tested this on the Binance testnet, where he was able to take his Raven and mint them on the Binance Smart Chain as, wrapped Ravencoin. And you're able to take that Raven and interact with the Binance Smart Chain in other ways and just go from there. Or you can take that Raven coin and send it back to the Ravencoin network. And in the process of doing that, so what you do is you open the position by taking your Raven over to the Binance Smart Chain, and it will mint wrapped Raven coin on the Binance Smart Chain that represent the Ravens that you locked away from the Ravencoin blockchain. And then what happens is you can take that Raven and you can do other DeFi stuff on the Binance Smart Chain. And then when you're done or whenever you're ready, you can cash in your Raven coin back to the Raven network, and those will be burnt as those Raven coin enter back into the blockchain, and your coins are then unlocked from your original contract.
It sounds very complicated to me, to be honest. Anyone else feel confused about this?
Yeah, I just think it's really interesting how we're finally starting to see some way more interaction with Raven and other blockchain technology, because I mean there's a lot of smart people working on it right now. I know a few developers myself. I as well am a developer, and we're currently talking about so many different ways we can implement Raven, because it has so much functionality for us to use. It's just now we need to figure out how we want to implement it. And now somebody commented on one of my posts the other day that he's working on a Raven metaverse, which is amazing, just to see how much it's finally moving on here.
Actually, Psychedelic Spectrum talked to me about that, creating Ravenverse.
Yeah, he was the one that commented on my post, I believe. I asked him like what his end goal was about it, and it's very interesting how he showed us a little sneak peek. If you go to my post, you should be able to find it. He showed a little sneak peek of it, and I just think it's super interesting. And I feel like now with this P2SH, we're going to see a lot of interesting things happen, especially if we do some cross blockchain functionality built within that. I think the possibilities are endless.
Let's talk about cross. Let's talk about the other functionalities that P2SH unlocks for us. Actually, give me a moment here. I think I can get Hans on right now. He's calling me. I think I can get him on right now. Give me a second here.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah.
So, I'm wondering if you guys have heard of One Harmony, that blockchain. So, yes. I've been following them, and they seem to have created a Bitcoin bridge to transfer Bitcoin to their blockchain. I guess I'm not sure if it's wrapped, or I'm not sure if it's even using the P2SH. But if they're able to do that and introduce Bitcoin to DeFi or DeFi to Bitcoin, I mean, I'm wondering how hard is it to implement that code for Raven if Raven's just a block of Bitcoin?
Yeah, something that was brought up last night was the ability to implement the Lightning Network into Ravencoin. P2SH is what will enable that.
Gotcha.
Which is really, that'll enable quite a bit of difference, because I mean the Lightning Network itself is a sense of being able to convert Bitcoin into cash instantly and then back into Bitcoin upon receival. So that's, think of the implications of that alone.
Gotcha. And so, I mean, that leads me to my real question is, what I'm really waiting for is for us to be able to stake or, use our Raven to collect interest. I know OKEX, I believe, it's based out of Asia, I believe. So I've seen them offering interest rates for Raven. I know we're not allowed to use it in the U.S., not allowed to use OKEX, but, would this allow us to, I guess, stake Raven in a way and collect interest off that and get rewards?
Now, it's hard to tell for that just because a lot of the restrictions that we face here in the U.S. are just on the government level. So it's really hard for us. It's really hard for a developer to, or anybody to really do that kind of development, because we also have to deal with, is the government going to step in? Because now with crypto in general started being a big news topic, on Fox Business and all these big networks. The government is starting to perk its ears up a little bit, and it's stuff like that kind of makes them go kind of crazy, because they're like, well, these interest rates are kind of nuts. And the big thing about that is just how we can lead off of that and do it in a way that the government would allow, say, for some exchange to allow that to happen in the first place.
So, I'm collecting some interest on some of my coins. I'm using Celsius for, like, my Bitcoin, Ethereum, Matic, stuff like that. And I'm wondering, how are they able to do that, give out interest? And I guess I'm not sure if anyone would know, but how does one request for a coin to be added to an application or a program like Celsius where we could collect interest off of that?
I believe there's a form that you have to fill out for the entity itself. I heard Tron talking about it in our podcast or on our Twitter space last night, and that there's a form and some legalities that you have to cover over it, and then once you submit it, it's up to them as to when they'll honor it.
Gotcha.
All right. So I have Hans on the mic now. Let's see if the audio works. Hans, welcome.
Yes, thank you.
Can you guys hear him properly? Give me a thumbs up. Give me 100% if you can hear him.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, Hans. So if you guys don't know who Hans is, from my experience, because I don't know him personally, but what I see is that he's one of the few people on the back end when it comes to development. He's the one that's bringing life to Ravencoin. He's the one that's making it easier for us as a community to be able to utilize what Ravencoin is. You'll always continue to see him doing development updates on the GitHub, and that's something important. That's what Hans and the main core developers are asking and requesting and begging you guys, please, Ravencoin community, please. We need testers. Test out the new wallet, 4.7. With that said, Hans, that sounds like a begging thing. Hans, welcome.
Well, thank you for that great talk-up. I'm glad to be here. I've been involved in Ravencoin since the very beginning and think it's got great times ahead still.
Perfect. All right, now we did sort of briefly went over P2SH, but from your experience and your side of development on Ravencoin, what is a team doing to make P2SH happen on Ravencoin?
Honestly, at this point, the only thing left to do on P2SH specifically is testing, and it's up to the community when to release the code. The code is essentially done. We had P2SH from the very beginning for Ravencoins themselves, but not for assets, because we inherited that capability from Bitcoin, just as you can use P2SH with BTC on the Bitcoin chain. But P2SH functionality wasn't working for assets because we encode assets in the outputs different than the Ravens themselves. That's where Ravencoin architecture differs from the way Bitcoin was designed. So P2SH wasn't working for assets until the last set of code updates, which we finished up, over previous months, really late summer, and we've done all the testing we can on it. As from the dev's viewpoint, we just need the users to beat it up and try it under various things. You can use P2SH for a number of different functionalities. I know some people have been using it to test multi-signature. I put together a test to make sure that it ran properly, doing cross-chain atomic swap functionality, and that seemed to work just fine too. But again, it's up to the community when to decide when to release the code.
Thank you, Hans. What other features are being developed other than P2SH, or what's the next layer in your I guess timeline for Ravencoin? What's being worked on? Is anything being worked on, or has everybody, all the developers, the very few developers that have been working like Hans, have been working hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands upon thousands of hours over the years trying to make Ravencoin what it is today, for us to have the next upgrade to the Ravencoin project?
Well, let me just point out that there's actually quite a few changes in addition to P2SH on this release that we're basically just waiting on the go ahead. A lot of them are clean up in the GUI, just to improve user friendliness. We've also made quite a bit of changes in terms of the way the screens lay out. In particular, you'll notice with the newest version that when you're setting up a new wallet, that the way you pick the mnemonic codes and all that, and the passwords, that is all much cleaner now, so that you can, if you're confused, you can go back, and so you don't end up in a screen that you can't get out of, that sort of thing. So we've done a lot of cleanup of those sorts of things. We've fixed a lot of bugs as well. And there's, we've got other features in the roadmap. There's a bunch of stuff that we're considering doing, but really we need to just get this next release out and then see what people say, see what the community feedback is.
Perfect. Thank you, Hans. Are there any questions so far before we move on to the next one? I know you guys got questions. Come on. Don't be late there. There's always questions.
Cool. Feel free to raise your hand and come up and speak if you have any questions, y'all. We really appreciate it.
I will say I missed the very beginning of the talk, but could anyone give me a brief explanation of what P2SH is for Bitcoin and what exactly it is, or what functionality it is?
Well, Hans, it looks like he just came in. Were you able to hear his question?
No, I just got unrecognizable scraps of audio.
Yeah, my apologies. He said that if you can repeat what P2SH is and the functionalities, basically what you just did.
Sure. Okay. So P2SH stands for pay to script hash. So instead of paying the Ravencoin or asset to a specific address, you pay it gets paid to the hash of a script, and that allows you to create a script using the available opcodes in the scripting language to create a number of different functionalities. I mean, it's really a general purpose script, and you just create the hash of that script, and you pay to the hash of that script. And so when someone wants to then spend that output, then they need to provide the script so that the software can generate the hash of that script and check it against what the hash was supposed to be paid to, make sure you have the original script. And then, of course, you need to satisfy the requirements of that script. So there's a number of things there's lots of things you could do, really an infinite number, but the most popular things that it's used for is multi-sig. There is an older way of doing multi-sig, but it's limited to 3 signatures, and it results in very large transactions. Doing multi-sig using P2SH always results in the same size transactions, no matter how many signatures you use, because it's only storing the hash of the script, and it can use a much larger number of signatures. So multi-sig is generally done using P2SH. The other thing that P2SH is critical for is for cross-chain atomic swaps, because it supports the creation of something they call HTLC's hash time lock contracts, which is the handshaking protocol that's used to implement cross-chain atomic swaps. So those are the 2 most common usages.
Perfect.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep. Multi-sig. Thank you. Multi-sig. The main use case for P2SH is the ability to easily support multi-signature transactions. This can provide extra security for a group of individuals or companies that want to ensure that no one person can move or steal the coins from a shared wallet. That's the most popular, right? Multi-sig. Now, how does that work when it comes to assets themselves? Because this particular comment here is in regards to the main coin. Does that still directly apply to the assets themselves?
It didn't used to until the new software update, but now it does. So every word you said now applies just as well to any asset as if it was a Ravencoin.
Bring the phone closer, John.
It's as close as I can put it. Yeah.
It got really quiet while he was talking there.
Hans, if you can repeat that again, please.
I was saying that in the previous version of the code, the multi-sig only worked for Raven. Now it works for assets fully and completely in the same way as if they were Raven. So you could do full threshold signature, threshold multi-sig, N of M type multi-sig with assets just the same as you do for Raven.
Perfect. Did you guys get that?
Second for this time.
Perfect. All right. Now, P2SH, the way I visually can see P2SH, Hans, and correct me if I'm wrong, but to me, I've always envisioned P2SH to be this door in the wall, in the blockchain wall. Once P2SH is fully implemented, it does unlock of other code updates. Like you mentioned, we can do Lightning, technically, right? Once P2SH is integrated, we can do segregated witness, we can do Lightning, we can do snore signatures, Taproot, Mimblewimble, Bulletproof. What else? There's a bunch of other things out there, but it all starts with P2SH. So, from my understanding, we as the community once again need to continuously test out the new wallets and the features, and like Hans said, the goal is to break it. Do whatever you can to find the flaws in the wallet. Just go tinker with it, get a couple test coins, tinker with it, and if you find something, report it. Trust me, they will love you for it, man. I'm telling you, they need more people because there's not that many people. Hans, how many people do you have testing the wallet other than developers?
Well, they're all volunteers, so we get sporadic feedback. We've got a couple of really good community members who, test everything all the time, but it's just too few people. I mean, there's a lot of complexity to this, as you're well aware. There's no dedicated testers, certainly.
Right.
Just as there are no dedicated developers.
Now, if we want Ravencoin to be a global thing with millions of people to use it, and we're having less than 100 testers, it's one of those things that, come on, community, please. We need people to test this wallet. Get in there. I encourage you to get in there, download the wallet, just tinker with it. Actually, it's a very beautiful wallet, right? Right, Hans? It's a 4.7 is a very beautiful wallet. It's if you guys haven't checked it out, the GUI is a beautiful thing. Check it out. Have fun with it, and use it for your main chain if you want, because you technically can use 4.7, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Any questions?
It definitely would help. It definitely would help if people were able to get in and test it. Because if this was to go live, and we missed a specific case where something broke, then things crash. The price crashes. There's bad news. People spread FUD. Oh my God, Ravencoin is broken. So it really is in our best interest as a community to make sure that this is battle ready. Because without that, and say it fails, just the slightest little sneeze of bad news, sends the price of any crypto down.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, so,
go ahead, JC.
So I have a few questions, and I'm really having a hard time hearing hands, so maybe somebody else can answer it. But yeah, questions pertaining as to really more the relationship of Ravencoin being a fork of Bitcoin. Like, how is that a strength? And what kind of things can be leveraged based on that, and maybe touch on the technical aspects of block size and the total supply, and all those basic things that are not as complicated for many of us here that are not as technical in terms of Bitcoin. I'm sorry, in terms of Ravencoin.
No worries. That I can speak to. Ravencoin is a fork of Bitcoin, which means Ravencoin inherits the same functionality as Bitcoin. So, as far as functionality is concerned, pretty much anything Bitcoin does, Ravencoin can do as well. One of the added benefits to that is asset creation. There was a bug in Bitcoin in that if you created an asset in Bitcoin and you ended up spending or using those coins that were originally designated for that asset, something broke, so they ended up turning that feature off in the official Bitcoin network. Ravencoin has pretty much fixed this and made it available so that you can spend assets, and essentially those coins that you spend on that asset are burnt. Burning Raven in that particular context just means it's sent to a specific Ravencoin asset wallet, and it actually says it in the name of the wallet address itself. It's like XXX Ravencoin asset XXX or something like that. So when you create an asset, you're actually sending your coins to a burn address, so those coins can never be respent or repurposed for anything else if you're creating an asset on it. As far as the block size is concerned, I believe Bitcoin's block size is 1 megabyte by default. They originally started off at 32 megabytes, but at some block number 5,000 or something like that, they cut it down to 1 megabyte. And that's where that whole discussion came out about, should we scale on-chain, should we scale off-chain, and Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin, as we know today, was born. Ravencoin's block size, we actually just looked that up earlier today, is 4 megabytes. So it's kind of sort of the Goldilocks middle point between too much and too little, in that you can fit a decent number of transactions on it. And then to enable Ravencoin to scale, we can also leverage things like the Lightning Network. Since Bitcoin that is supported by Bitcoin, Ravencoin can also support using and leveraging the Lightning Network as well. And I'm sorry for bouncing around, but to touch on the assets one more time, the other thing is you can create NFTs out of your assets by leveraging the IPFS transaction address. IPFS stands for the Interplanetary File System. And for those that don't know, it's basically where you store the actual content of your movies, your videos, your images. If you want to store something on a blockchain and it's too big to fit on something that's specific to a currency, like Ravencoin, Bitcoin, Ethereum, then you would store that on IPFS, the Interplanetary File System. And I created an NFT out of my logo. The image itself is stored on IPFS. I go and I take that image and I just supply it to that network, and it's stored on that network. And then I take the hash that I get from that, the QWXZ, whatever, and I take that and I put that into my asset on Ravencoin, and that's how you create an NFT on the Ravencoin network.
So is it correct that with Ravencoin, you don't need stacks like you do with Ethereum or other platforms because its relationship or its origin with Bitcoin?
That's correct.
Something else I'll add with that as well is that it gives you the ability to time lock a contract, right? So say you want to sell this asset out with somebody, you can put a time limit up for, let's call it, 20 days that they have to make that payment. If that payment is not made by that other party, then it releases that asset right back into your wallet. But if they pay for it and put up payment, it immediately triggers that immediately to then trigger that payment over to your wallet and for the to be swapped over to them. So in a swap sense.
Can you guys hear me? I got a quick question about like blockchain game development. Would P2SH lead to the ability to create like a MetaMask extension for Raven?
Hans, that's all you, Hans. Did you have
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite understand the question.
The question is for game development. Will P2SH be able to create a? Will you be able to create a MetaMask wallet? Is that what it was? Raven
MetaMask MetaMask extension, like a browser extension, for Raven. Or do you have to wrap Raven,
I think primarily what the interest here is in being able to really be able to trade wrapped coins of one kind or another, and doing wrapped coins basically requires a bridge to another chain so that you can basically trade assets on other chains, and bridging chains is specifically what hash time lock contracts are for, which require P2SH. So once you have P2SH functionality, then you can implement cross-chain atomic swaps, the way Atomic Dex does, for instance. But you can also take the next step in terms of building a bridge to other blockchains and wrap those assets and trade them on dexes. Does that answer your question?
So you could theoretically use like wrapped asset to create like a game token, and then since it's on a different chain, you can use the MetaMask extension with the wrapped asset, Raven asset, right?
Yeah, I couldn't quite make that out, but it sounded right.
It sounded like he's saying. So you're Raven NFT. Are you asking if we can use the same MetaMask wallet and just integrate the Raven address within it?
Wrapped Raven, a wrapped Raven asset. Like if you had a token or whatever, you needed to communicate with the game and the players. You could use a MetaMask extension with a wrapped Raven asset to build like a game around.
Well, I think Marquezano mentioned something about somebody being able to do wrapped Raven on the Binance smart chain, correct?
Right.
So
that's the issue, is that a game developer is going to be using the Binance smart chain for their game because we don't have a MetaMask extension.
That's the thing. You could, and correct me if I'm wrong, but by what he mentioned earlier about that, if we're able to do Raven through the Binance smart chain, then that means, because you could do the Binance smart chain through MetaMask, so technically, I think it should work in that way.
Right. That's pretty neat.
I think because since, and like I said, correct me if I'm wrong, because on MetaMask, you do have access to the BSC mainnet, so I don't see why you wouldn't be able to. Right there.
Okay, good. Yeah, so you guys have any idea on like any updates with any mobile wallets? This quote-unquote official Raven mobile wallet has just been a nightmare for years now. We got any developments on any of that?
Hans, the question is there any development to update the current Ravencoin mobile wallet?
Well, I don't know if we're allowed to
Yes, actually, there's a project called Moontree, which has basically completely rewriting the Ravencoin mobile wallet. It will leverage the Electrum X technology. The Electrum X technology has been completely rewritten also in the last few months. So now we have a new client for Ravencoin that's Electrum based for desktops that not only can handle Raven but also the assets, as well as a server version that understands assets. So Electrum has been generalized now to and updated to support assets as well as Ravencoin, and the Moontree mobile wallet will use the Electrum servers.
Does that happen to be Whale Street's project?
Whose?
Whale Street from Discord.
Whale Street.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yes.
Moontree is financially supported by Whale Street.
And then, how long were we saying the ETA on that one?
You're sounding really bad on your audio there.
Sorry, what's the ETA on that? Like month or?
What's the ETA on that, Hans?
That's not my project, but last time we asked it was when they're ready.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, I appreciate the update.
I mean, I know they've been hard at work at it for months, and I can tell from the discussions that are ongoing that they've made a lot of progress. But I think they're trying to clean up the menu system.
Yeah, I think I was talking with Whale Street about that all the way back in maybe May or June of this year. So I was just curious. I haven't talked to him, and so maybe I thought maybe you had an idea. Okay.
Yeah, I think there was a delay because the original plan back this summer was to write a new mobile wallet based on Blue Wallet, and they got pretty far into that project and decided that it just didn't meet their quality requirements, so they scrapped all that code and started over again.
All right.
Perfect.
Yeah, well, you might as well do it right the first time, right?
Yeah. All right, thank you. Thank you, Raven, RVN FT. Quothing, go ahead.
Yeah, so I know that there's been a subject that's been really talked about in just the cryptocurrency community as a whole that's really gained a lot of traction, and I mean, it goes all the way deep into Wall Street even, and VCs, and the subject is DAOs. It seems to me that the biggest problem that there was with the Constitution DAO was that once it failed, the ability to send back that money was irrelevant due to the gas fees that was tied up inside of that DAO. Do you see that Ravencoin with P2SH could configure a sort of DAO and the ability to configure in that way? But obviously with the lower transaction fees, that would be 100% returnable if for some reason the project failed.
That's for you, Hans.
Oh, okay. So I think the biggest issue with distributed autonomous organizations is that they're being used for a lot of different purposes, and the generality basically relies on the fact that Ethereum virtual machine allows such general purpose contracts, and having general purpose contracts is a nice thing. You know, it gives you a lot of power and flexibility. It also brings with it a lot of risk. I mean, every day we see, it seems like every day, certainly every week, we're hearing about $50+ million hacks against various smart contracts. Ravencoin's approach is very different. You know, the scripting language that we have currently is what we inherited from Bitcoin, and we're adding P2SH, which lets you use that scripting capability more flexibly with assets, but it's not as flexible as an Ethereum is, and it never will be, and we really don't want it to be. What we want to do is we want to pick specific use cases within the DAOs, not everything under the sun, but what are the most common usage scenarios, and build that into the protocol at the protocol level, and make sure that at the protocol level it is sound and secure, so that we don't have these kinds of losses. And so architecturally, Ravencoin is much more focused than a general purpose world computing kind of idea. Much more focused, but also much more secure and much lower cost.
I appreciate that and for answering that. Thank you. That definitely wraps up my question. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. So we got about 15 minutes left. Listen, everybody that's here right now, everybody should have their hands up right now, because it's a rare opportunity to get Hans on the mic to talk about code. So Whatever you want in regards to code, Ravencoin code, talk to him. This is a guy you want to know everything about Ravencoin. Pick his brain. There we go. We're getting the request coming in now. Good. Thank you. All right. The next person. Who was the next person? Degen. Or who was next?
Brandon?
Yeah, Brandon.
Brian, hey, thanks. If you could like give a dumbed down definition of is it the paid to script hash? Yeah. If you could just
you want a low level simple explanation for how it works.
Yeah.
So normally when you want to pay your Bitcoin to somebody, you ask them for their address, right? And you basically send your Bitcoin to that address, and because they have the private key that address corresponds to, they can then spend it, correct? So P2SH changes the model completely. Instead of paying to a specific address, you pay to the script of a hash, to the hash of a script rather. So what you do is you basically write a program, a script using opcodes within the Ravencoin scripting language, and you write this program, and then you take the hash of the program, and then what you do is you do a P2SH, which means pay to the hash of that script, pay to script hash. And what that means basically is that when somebody wants to spend that Bitcoin that's been locked up that way, they need to do two things. First, they need to provide the script so that software can take the hash of that script and verify that they actually knew what the original script was. And then they have to satisfy whatever the requirements of that script are, whatever the requirements of that program is. So if that program says, well, I need 3 different addresses, I need 3 of 5 different addresses, and they have to unlock they have to give me signatures that correspond to these public keys that I've got stored, then that's what it does. Or if it requires excuse me, or if the script requires that the person, in addition to a key, also needs to know some secret, which is the way hash time lock contracts work, then you have to satisfy that requirement. So fundamentally, instead of paying to an address, you're paying to a program. I mean, this is part of the scripting capability that we're talking about, and the kinds of things you can use to build simple DAOs.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Is it kind of like modeled after? Maybe I know what I'm talking about, but like a blockchain, right? Essentially, right?
Ravencoin is a blockchain.
Thank you. All right.
It's all blockchain technology. It's just a question of how you control the security of what a Ravencoin is paid to and who gets to cash it.
Right. So let me elaborate on that, Hans, just a little bit, and correct me if I'm wrong, but all this scripting code, the pay to script, the hash, all these hashes is literally so the hash itself is a hash of a Merkle tree. The Merkle tree is what holds all the transactions that are being placed within that hash. That hash, which is a header of all the transactions that are being compiled within the script, which happens to be off-chain. So none of this stuff is going on-chain, which alleviates a lot of the transaction and the mess that goes on. That all happens off-chain. The only thing that happens on-chain is this hash, not the transaction, because the transactions all happen off-chain. The hash is validated by a private key, correct, Hans? Or am I?
Yeah. So basically, a hash is a mathematical function that takes any arbitrary length number and reduces it into a fixed length quantity in some unique way that you can't do backwards. So if I can give you any arbitrary large data file, for instance, and tell you to hash that file, and you always end up with the same number of digits in that hash, based on whatever that hash function is, and it can't be undone. In other words, if you have the hash, you don't know what file it came from, and in fact, it's not even a unique mapping, but mathematically, there's such an infinite number of possibilities that it can't be undone. So hashes are used for a couple of different things. The situation that you described early on involving Merkle trees and such, is where hashes are basically used to hash together all the transactions in a block, and you put that hash into the header of the block to represent all the transactions. That hash basically represents all that massive amount of data in all the transactions, but the hash itself is still short. In a P2SH, it's a slightly different situation. It's not related to Merkle trees. In that case, you have a program of arbitrary length, and you take that program of arbitrary length, and again, you're sending it through the same mathematical function, and you end up with, again, a hash of a certain fixed length, and it's only that fixed length that you store in the transaction. That's what makes P2SH transactions always the same size and always small, regardless of how complex the program is, right. How complex the script is.
Yeah, I believe. Oh, looks like Twitter's shutting down on me. Give me a second here. Hopefully we're still on. Give me a second here, Hans. Twitter is bizarre this way. I hope we're still on. And reconnect. Yes, there we go.
You to express a specific use case.
Sorry about that.
Somebody has to. Oh, there you are, John.
Yeah, sorry about that. Twitter is just not friendly when you're on it too long. It just closes down on me. Sorry about that. So where were we at? What did you guys get before we close down? What did you guys hear? The last thing you guys heard? Anything? No. Okay.
We're talking about the definition of a hash, and you were going to go to the next part.
Get through?
Did any of the explanation get through?
Yeah, you were talking about the definition of a hash, and we were getting to the next part, and then it cut out about
how hashes work.
Okay, so how hashes work? If you want to talk about that, how no matter how complex the script, the transactions are, whether it be a single transaction or a multi-sig transaction, no matter the complexity of those transactions, once they're placed within the script will spit out a hash. That hash has a certain weight, correct? Or is it size? That's where I get confused, Hans.
Yeah, it's just the size of the number of digits in the hash. The weight is really a concept that Bitcoin people created to explain some of the things that are going on with SegWit. At this point, it's not something we have to talk about for Ravencoin.
Okay, so in regards to size, this hash has a certain size, which now we don't have to push all these transactions. We are still pushing the same amount of transactions into the network because it's not compiled or aggregated. It's not aggregated transactions, correct? These are still single transactions going into the network. But what the output is from that when it goes into the script is it's spitting out a hash. That hash has a reduced amount size, correct? And that's somewhere between 40 and 60% difference, correct?
Yeah, that's what you're talking about there. Again, is for space saving for SegWit, right?
Yeah.
For the way hashes work in P2SH is that basically there's a script which is a program, right? And that complete program is attached to a single transaction. And that program is sent through the hashing function. A hash is generated, and that hash goes into that single transaction. So you could have a block which has multiple transactions. Each of those transactions has a complex program attached to it, and each of those complex programs is generating a hash which is going into its corresponding transaction. So we're kind of mixing two completely different concepts. One is the hashing that's going on in a block header to represent all the stuff that's in a block. The other is the hashing that's going on in a program, a script program, that hash is then stored in a single transaction to represent the script that's hidden inside the transaction.
This blows my mind. I'm not a developer, so I'm good. Anyone else? I'm lost for words.
Look at it like an onion,
Well,
John.
the bottom line is that P2SH allows arbitrarily long programs until you hit the limit for what the scripting capability is able to support in terms of the number of bytes. But I mean, that means you can basically create a transaction that says, well, you need this key and you need to know that secret, and it has to be more than this many times in this amount of time in the future, but not longer than that amount of time. And maybe there has to be a second key from somebody else, and you could attach the entire program to a single transaction.
Okay. There is a question here from one of the community members. Seve, ask him to explain why cross-chain atomic swaps are important.
Cross-chain atomic swaps are basically the trustless way of you exchanging a token with somebody on a different chain. Anytime a financial transaction takes place, that financial transaction always requires atomicity. Atomicity basically means that one side of the transaction doesn't take place unless the other side of the transaction also does. In other words, a bank, for instance, should never allow a withdrawal from one account without a deposit in a different account, or taking money from one customer without giving it to another customer, right? You never want one half of that transaction to take place without the other. And in the traditional finance world, that's generally done using trusted parties. I mean, if two parties get together and want to swap, how do you guarantee atomicity? If Alice gives Bob money, how does she know Bob's going to give it? If she's buying something, a product or a token, if she hands over her asset, how is she guaranteed that Bob's going to reciprocate by handing over his? Without a trusted party, that can't be done. So generally, in the traditional world, each party gives what they have to a third trusted party, and that third then hands it back out again. So in the blockchain world, we have the same sorts of situations between different chains, and you need some way of doing a trusted party. And so what we do is we create something called a hash time lock contract, which implements a trusted party using blockchain code. And hash time lock contracts require P2SH functionality because they require this kind of coding program associated with the transaction that I described earlier.
Okay, I think I just got it. I'm sorry if I didn't do a very good justice of explaining this earlier today, but I think the light bulb just clicked in my head. It's basically like escrow. If you want to be able to exchange value from one person to another, and you don't know if that person is actually going to send that money back to you because you're trying to purchase something from them, in order to facilitate a transaction in a secure, trustless way, I would send my money to a script that would handle that for me, as opposed to a trusted third party, knowing that that script is written into the blockchain, such that if the other person, falls through and doesn't send their money, then I get my money back. Whereas if they do follow through and they do give me the payment for whatever service that I'm providing, then the transaction can go through. So basically, P2SH, if I were to oversimplify it, is basically escrow. Is that a good oversimplification of it?
Yes. So much yes.
That's what it sounds like.
Perfect. All right, DGen, who was the next speaker or next question?
I think his mic got kicked and something was up with that. He just messaged me.
Okay, let's see. Was it Tasso?
No, I was good for right now.
Okay. Let's see, we do have another request here. Okay, we have Luz. Go ahead. Got to unmute your microphone.
I saw them unmute for a second there.
Yeah.
I got a question from somebody in the community. How are we gonna prepare all these exchanges that hold Ravencoin for this update? Is there like a group of people, and I guess I can partially answer this. I know for a fact that there people that are helping and are prepared to reach out to exchanges as well as mining pools for the vote for P2SH, but as well the exchanges that hold Ravencoin for the P2SH fork. So I know that I'm a part of it with the Raven Angels, but I know that there's probably other groups that are helping do this as well. Is that correct?
Who was that question to?
I guess that was at Hans, or yeah, more Hans, because Hans being in the development side, if he's aware of people or groups, or if there's a community involvement that we need to garnish to get all of these different exchanges and groups of people aware of the fork that's upcoming.
Well, I know that Tron in the past has been very active in that, and as has Jiraz. It's been a while since we did a big hard fork like this, so the community has kind of changed since then. So it's less clear who's going to do that around. I can additionally say though that we're taking additional precautions in the sense that there's a voting period which occurs, and I forget what numbers we finally ended up settling on. But there's a voting period that takes place where the miners signal whether they're willing to accept the new version of the node software, and then once that locks in as having been accepted, then there's a delay period before it actually takes effect, and we've increased both of those numbers substantially. So it's gonna take a while for the signaling to lock in, but even after the lock-in period, there's an extended period of time during which we have to notify everyone. But I'm not really involved in efforts to contact the exchanges in that.
No, thank you. Either way, yeah, thank you. I think that wraps up some of the question of that for sure. So thank you.
Perfect. We got one more question, and this is from H. Raf Nagalder. He is
thanks.
Unofficial historian of Ravencoin.
So I've been around Ravencoin for a long time. Hopefully you guys can hear me all right, huh?
Yes.
All right. And probably the most asked question is going to be, how do we pronounce my name? And it's Haraf Nagalder. I guess my head's kind of spinning. We got Hans on the line, and I I have a lot that I'd want to ask, but I guess I'll try to just stay on the most recent topics. One is that, like, I would ask Hans what he meant. So someone asked Hans if P2SH kind of meant escrow, and so I would actually ask. I think that P2SH can enable things far beyond escrow, and I would ask briefly if Hans has any ideas for, like, what the future of escrow might look like on a UTXO blockchain that has P2SH assets enabled, and, like, what kind of complex functionalities we might see, like, at the practical implementation level for, like, so what does P2SH mean for the common user as far as, like, technological implications we haven't seen before, I guess.
So, I think we've already talked about the two major applications. We've already talked about the two major applications of P2S, specifically multi-sig and hash time lock contracts for cross-chain atomic swaps. There's a lot more. P2SH can do a lot more of that, but I think we should not underestimate how much value there is in being able to treat any asset using multi-sig or any asset using cross-chain atomic swaps. I mean, cross-chain atomic swaps, as I said, allow you to do wrapped coins, and therefore you can basically set up DEXs with that technology. So that alone, I think, is very, very powerful. We shouldn't underestimate. It takes time, of course, for the application community to write GUIs around all that functionality. But I think once we have P2SH We can also start writing more general purpose contracts, and then we'll probably want to start looking at the scripting language and adding a few additional capabilities. There's been a lot of discussion in the Bitcoin community of adding a couple of new opcodes. Certainly Bitcoin Cash and some of the other Bitcoin forks have had a lot of them. Bitcoin's been pretty conservative. But even within the conservative Bitcoin community, there's been discussion of adding a few opcodes specifically to enable something called covenants, which we don't have time to get into today. But once you have covenant capability and P2SH capability, then you start to be able to write programs that not only control how a Bitcoin can be spent, but how it can be spent in the future, so that you can lock it up in various much more complex ways. Again, there's not really time to get into the details, but P2SH together with additional opcodes for covenants gives you a much more powerful programming language than we currently have.
Thanks, Hans.
Perfect. All right.
If I may,
JC, go ahead.
If I may, I just wanted to say thank you to Blockchain and all the other speakers, Mark Pisano, for jumping in at the last minute. We had a speaker lined up that could not make it, and we had to jump through hoops to organize something here. And I know it's been a bit difficult in the back end. So thank you guys. Thank you to the team for jumping in and making this happen. And to the listeners, to everybody else paying attention and joining us in these spaces, please know that not all the future spaces are going to be as technical as this one. Hopefully, for some of you that are, some of these things are too... we'll talk about more practical uses, and hope that you guys can continue to join us. If you are a Ravencoin supporter, it is really important that you guys continue to tweet and join us, because every time one of these space meetings, your followers see that you're in these space meetings and they'll want to join as well. So thank you, everybody, for showing up. Thank you, hosts, co-hosts, speakers. Gordon, thanks for jumping in. Marquezano, and I know there were some audio challenges as well. Hans, thank you so much for showing up. Let's keep this going, guys. Blockchain John is all yours.
All right, thank you. JC, if you can just let us know what tomorrow's event is for day 3 of the T-30 event.
Wow, you put me on the spot.
Okay. You're actually driving, aren't you? So I apologize. I don't want to sidetrack you on that. I apologize.
I think it may be use cases, and I think it may be Adam with Mango assets, or I think that's. But I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, perfect.
It's the Ravencoin halvening. That is our topic tomorrow, is the halving and what that implicates, and we're gonna have some guests on for that as well.
Perfect.
Sorry, I've got it in front of me.
Thank you. So with that said, everybody, thank you, all the listeners, thank you for being here. DJen, being my co-host, JC Quothing, Marquezano, and of course the legendary Hans. This is the first time I get to talk to him. Hans, thank you for being with us. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Sorry about the poor audio, but
you did your best. Okay,
hope
so
it was useful.
Thank you. For everybody that's still here, we do have Braveland. Make sure you download Braveland. Hang out with us. We're having an event. Quothing, do you remember the event? What is it? January 8th, right?
Yes, sir. I got it pinned up there. January 8th. There's going to be like a bazaar, pretty much. Look at it like a flea market to meet your NFT artists. There's going to be a bunch of booths. I'm going to be there. You're going to be there. DJ's going to be there. It's going to be hot. So make sure you download Braveland.
All right, with that said, happy birthday, Cryptolissa. It's our birthday today. Thank you. Woo! All right.
Happy birthday, Cryptolissa.
Yep. And for C3 Media, if you go to C3 Media 2, the number 2, we are having a sticker giveaway for Ravencoin. Just go over to the Twitter page at C3 Media 2, and we have that pinned at the top regarding a giveaway. So check that out. With that said, we are out of here. Until next time, stack sats and HODL. Adios. Thank you, Hans.
Thanks much, guys.
Thank you, Hans. You freaking rock.